If we think about the behaviours that are being targeted by the DMA that can be harmful, there's also great examples of where they can be beneficial to consumers, depending upon the circumstances. Thinking about this need to look at the context and the business model, it sort of becomes clear that the DMA's one-size-fits-all approach, while maybe intended to address short-run contestability and fairness questions, runs the risk of eroding some of the value that platforms can create for consumers. And I think we'd like to see a bit more focus on consumers within the discussion, rather than assuming that they are necessarily well served by increased contestability every single time.
Restricting product integration can in some cases degrade quality and reliability. Again, I understand the sentiment that sometimes forced bundling and forced integration reduces the likelihood that a newcomer could come in at the interface, and therefore reduces the possibility of contestability. Okay, and that is a very important point, and it needs to be examined on a case-by-case basis. In a similar way that we wouldn't dream, because it wouldn't make any sense, to force an automotive maker to open up every single of its interfaces between the engine and the steering wheel, between the steering wheel and other connections of the car. We wouldn't dream of asking Volkswagen, for example, to let, every single producer of components of automobile, maybe from China or others, to just plug and play their own subsystems within what we consider a more integrated product. In the same way, pushing the notion that that the very notion of service integration is something to be contested, I think is unrealistic. And I think if the objective is to favor contestability, I think there are ways to do that. That in some cases will look exactly what like this amendment says, but in others will not. And that's why in this case, again, I think it would be very important that the regulator looks on a case-by-case basis.
This case-by-case approach of competition law has been rejected. It's not going to happen. Political decision has been made to accept the economic costs in order to have a more administrable process for government intervention, less checks and balances, less opportunities for gatekeepers or defendants to prove anything opposite, provide defenses or objective justifications or efficiencies. And I think industry just has to accept that going forward. Government will be much more involved in product design decisions ex ante. And going forward, platforms will increasingly need to get permission from enforcers before making any changes to platform services. We're already seeing this in competition enforcement, and I think it'll just be more pervasive under ex ante regulation, as any regulated industry is well aware.
What we need to be careful about is not to put into law things that are impossible to implement. And therefore, I think it's better to ask for transparency and to put choices in the hand of the users so that they know. Hopefully we'll get, in the negotiation, in the trilogue, there'll be some pushback on that. Hopefully we'll get, in that process to an outcome which is more similar to what the UK is doing, which offer a customized code of conduct that give the right medicine to the right disease, as opposed to throw the whole pharmacy on it. And hopefully there will be adequate resourcing from our regulatory institutions.
I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to the participants for being so eloquent and fluid in their points. I think we've all learned a lot, and all bomb ahead to the trilogues next month.